from within the United States, but because we're a connectional church, we have people basically from all over the world voting on things that are going to affect the book of discipline. So the statement that that commission created back then, in 1972, read something like this. Homosexuals, no less than heterosexuals, are persons of sacred worth, who need the ministry and guidance of the church in their struggles for human fulfillment, as well as the spiritual and emotional care of a fellowship which enables reconciling relationships with God, with others, and with self. Further, we insist that all persons are entitled to have their human and civil rights ensured. Okay? So that was the statement that they brought up before the General Conference to make it part of the Book of Discipline. But then that was the moment when that statement was not approved and was changed. And that's when we began to add language to the Book of Discipline, talking about how little by little the language began to change to a point where we added that the practice of homosexuality was incompatible with Christian teaching. And so from that point, really, I would say this conversation about sexuality started. One of my professors from seminary made the point that this resolution was brought up by the progressive people within the New United Methodist Church. And my professor jokingly said, if the progressives hadn't said anything, we wouldn't have this problem right now, because there wouldn't be anything in the Book of Discipline. That's just him being funny. But the only point he was trying to make is that at that point, the human sexuality issue was not something that the conservative part of the Methodist Church was interested in at that moment. Does that make sense? And so out of that conversation then, we began to have this discernment, disagreement, however you want to call it, that what has brought us to this place where we are right now. And so, I don't know if you noticed there was one word in this statement from 1972. It was the word reconciling. So I want you to remember that, because, again, this is going to make sense as I'm going to keep talking to you. So this is our history. When we began, again, as a denomination, as we were trying to work together, how the Brethren Church and the Methodist Church were going to become one, how we were going to be working together, how we're gonna work out the distribution of churches and the appointment of pastors and all of those things. The issue of sexuality was not more important. It was really about how we're going to now distribute things, how the conferences are going to be divided, how we're going to be paying salaries. All of those things really became the most important part of those conversations, except by this commission that was put together to explore the questions about homosexuality. Because remember, the issue of homosexuality is not only an issue that was present within the church. There has been an evolution, if you wanna call it that way, in terms of sexuality in our society. So I think that from the beginning, as the new church was trying to become interested in the social issues around culture and the world, the issue of human sexuality became one of those. And so out of that conversation and that proposal of the statement, you can say this war began. And from there, we just have kept going, disagreeing about how to handle the Book of Discipline. First about the issue of homosexuality and the Bible, then related to gay clergy, and then more specifically marriages of people, same-sex marriages and all of those things that now we have, that has continued to evolve and has gotten bigger. So out of those disagreements that kept happening every 4 years, there was always a group within the United Methodist Church who kept bringing up legislation. They kept inviting the church to open up themselves to be welcoming, to be accepting. And so that got us to 1984. Now again, this is now 16 years. I'm summarizing those 16 years, but there's a lot of issues in between now and then. But really, in 1984, that's when the United Methodist Church again, the language began to get stronger against homosexuality in particular. And that's when they added to the book of discipline, no self-avowed practicing homosexual shall be ordained or appointed in the United Methodist Church. Again, I want you to think about this. None of this that we have right now was from the beginning when the United Methodist Church was formed. This was like a build-up that kept happening every 4 years, until we got to the point of where we are.
Excuse me, did you just read for the ministers? Read that sentence
So
again.
this is the sentence that was added to the book of discipline. No self-avowed practicing homosexual shall be ordained or appointed in the United Methodist Church. And the definition of self-avowed is someone who is nowadays, it was a civil union, now it is a marriage. Someone who is in a marriage with a person, same-sex person, marriage. So.
But I'm still confused. Were they speaking to the congregation or just to you as the minister? That
They were speaking to everybody.
Can't do it.
Well, yes, they began to speak to, but again, remember, this is a progression. The statement about homosexuality being incompatible with Christian teaching was already there, right? So what they kept adding is, okay, so we are clear that this homosexuality is not okay, but now we want to make sure that we don't get gay pastors. Does that make sense?
But
So
can they become members of the church?
they can become members.
Oh, we're inclusive.
Yeah. They can become members.
Yes, that's what I want to say.
From my military background, did we go through a period of don't ask, don't tell?
Well, we're
Did you
still
understand
there.
what I just said?
Yes, I think
In
that.
the military, you could be in the military as long as you didn't tell everybody that you were homosexual.
I would say that that's what we were doing. I think that I would say in some ways that that's what we have been doing.
The self-avowed is the word that, is
That-
the trigger.
Right, and practicing. So there have been pastors, male and female, who, we all knew,
Right.
But remember, a civil union was not an option, right? Until recently, or marriage was not an option. So we knew that they had roommates, all those things. They have housemates, roommate, a friend. So, and congregations knew, they knew. Their congregations knew. I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist sometimes to know those things. And so we were living under that. Except that again, as this issue kept progressing outside of the church, and then the pressure also started to become stronger within the church to do something about that. Because you have to remember, if we jump to what happened 2019, we have gone from this to really penalizing gay clergy, if there are any self-avowed gay clergy, also to penalizing very harshly any pastor who may do a same-sex wedding. There used to be a process where you might get suspended, right? If you do a same-sex wedding, as a clergy, you may get suspended. Now, the moment you do something like that, you lose your credentials. You lose everything. So again,
everything is your pension.
yes, everything. Everything gets lost from, and so again, that's 2019. But to your question, Rich, yes, it was, and to your question, there's never been, a ban, we're not banning gay people to be part of the congregation, but it also depended on the congregation.
That's right.
In Virginia, when I was in Virginia, in the late 1990s, there was a pastor who denied membership to a gay member. He didn't let him become a member. And so, again, so all of this really began to get complicated, and just a lot of things began to come out. So let me go back to 1984. So in 1984, that's when this Reconciling Ministries Network really was formally created as an organization that was going to advocate for the affirmation and inclusivity of people who, different sexuality than heterosexual. And so from that moment on, the work of this group began to grow individually. They started, at some point throughout our history, there have been pastors who have gone against the book of discipline and they have performed, same-sex weddings. And so this Reconciling Ministry Network, they have become advocates for the pastors. They have gathered congregations. You as an individual can become part of the Reconciling Network. So out of that sense of advocacy, the group has come together to provide resources of all sorts. If you go to their website, you will see that they have all sorts of information about Bible studies. They have pamphlets, how to begin a conversation, to become reconciling. And so out of that effort, we get to this place where the numbers that they are publishing in their information is, let me just give it to you. They're claiming that right now, for example, there are over 900 reconciling communities or ministries or churches, and over 35,000 members.
I just read something that said 1,800.
So what?
I just read something that said 1,800.
I just read the website today, but maybe you're right, maybe
I
double.
didn't read it off the website. I just
Yeah,
read it.
yeah. Well, that's what I found, but yeah, I mean, Gary keeps saying that it's over 1,000 congregations. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Out of how many?
we have 600 in the Baltimore-Washington Conference. So, I don't know, I will tell you maybe 30,000 at least.
But there's some, like Foundry, they're reconciling, and then there's one in Delaware that I know of where Bob Holland.
Yeah, there are, I think, 7 congregations. There are.
There's one in Silver Spring, I believe.
College Park.
Yeah, College Park, yeah. I mean, they're all around right here.
Right,
I've
so.
been following their Facebook group, because they have a Facebook thing, and at least once a day, if not 4 or 5 times a day, there's a new congregation picture showing up saying a new group has joined, all over the country. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes you see a picture of like 5 people in a small town in Kansas, but like every day.
I believe just recently there's a reconciling congregation out of Africa.
That'd be interesting.
That's
Yeah.
big.
Yeah.
That's really.
That's death over there.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't know that. So you can imagine then that the activism and the work of the Reconciling Ministry Network has gotten stronger as the time has gone by, but in particular in the last, I would say, 12 years, the work has been very intense, because you also have to remember that, there is certainly a generational change with the pastors. And so you have the pastors who, I'm already an old pastor, I am too.
You hide your gray hair well.
That's a lot of gray hair, Bob.
You have a 3-year-old, of course.
So if you put me with Chelsea and you put me here, you see that for them, for example, this is not
Not a
an
problem.
issue,
Right.
right? This is not, it's a given in many ways of why are we having this conversation, right?
That's right.
And then I came out of, I'm an in-between generation, okay? One who grew up with, my teachers, my professors were the older pastors, maybe like before Ginger, your pastor. Except for that generation, they were my teachers, right? And so they had a completely different progressives. I'm not saying that they were not progressives, but it was a different understanding of even how to have conversations about social issues, how to protest the issues, how to bring up the issues, generally speaking, with exceptions. So I am in a place where, I mean, Chelsea she's just teaching me things that I don't have a clue. I'm asking questions about how things are developing, not just within the United Methodist Church, but just in general, conversations about gender and all of these things, because I don't understand. In fact, was it Friday, October 11th, this past Friday, right?
Yes.
It was coming out day. I don't know if you knew that. It's a coming out day. And if you were on Facebook, you may have seen some of those, and some of you knew, but I had some friends that came out that I didn't know. With different, there are nuances about what certain things mean. And so we are all in this learning process. And so the Reconciling Network has come and so has tried to bring all of those changes and bring all the people together and try to, for people who are at a basic level trying to explain and to understand, and in particular help congregation walk through that journey so that they can begin to have a conversation and understand not only what it would mean for a church to become reconciling, but really to begin to understand the differences of the different sexuality and understanding of sexuality that we are really beginning to understand. So the resources that they have, again, are, I will recommend you to go into their website and just as a way for you to get information and to read it. They're very helpful. There are testimonies, and it's very diverse. I think they have, again, all sorts of questions, materials that you can use for a Bible study, for a congregational discussion, for, again, just even beginning a simple conversation with your neighbors. How can you be supportive of people who are gay? How can you be an ally? That's the word that, how can you be an ally? How can you be there for them? Even if you're in a congregation that is not accepting, how can you really just be part of this process and this conversation? So the Reconciling Network, there is actually also, the Baltimore Washington has a branch of the Reconciling Network specifically. So it's a national organization, but they also have, at a conference level, they have a group that also helps and supports congregations or individuals who want to begin to explore what this means for them or the congregation. In fact, on Sunday, October 27, when we're going to have our last session, we are going to have a congregation at Bethesda United Methodist Church. It's on Connecticut Avenue. That's, the traffic is awful. And
Right.
Connecticut Avenue.
Pastor.
Right? So they just became reconciling a year ago. And they're gonna come and talk to us how they started the process, why they started the process, and what you're gonna find out is that the process was really driven by their youth group.
But the young.
Their youth group were the ones driving the process for them to become reconciling. They were a congregation very similar to St. Matthew's, already very accepting and understanding of that. But not with the title reconciling. They were basically like a mirror of St. Matthew's, but they went through the process during the general conference, situation, and before they started to have that conversation. So
I'd like to jump forward a moment. So let's just say the churches that we know, that I personally know, that are reconciling at this time, and the minister's all on board. So the minister is retiring. Does that mean the bishop is going to pay attention to who they send to that church, or do they send someone else that's not?
they
not
have to
you?
send,
I mean, do they meaning the bishop recognizing?
yes, they do.
Vicky Starnes' church, she's
Right,
now
they're
retiring?
not gonna send a conservative pastor
Yeah, okay.
to Rehoboth, right, Sir Rehoboth?
Yes, Rehoboth,
Okay.
yeah.
They're not, yeah, so the appointment system also, all of those things are taken into account.
So at least they recognize it.
They recognize, yeah.
But they could send a gay pastor to them?
It depends on the conference and the bishop. It depends on the conference and the bishop. Right now, everyone is waiting to see what's gonna happen really in 2020, because that's when all of what that was voted is triggered. Right now, we're waiting. January 1st, the bishops are under a new quote-unquote discipline. And so, some bishops have said that they're not gonna follow the discipline. Some other bishops have said that they're going to enforce the discipline. The bishop in the Virginia conference, she said that she's going to enforce the book of discipline. So it's letting know pastors that if they do something that is clearly against the book of discipline, they're going to be penalized. Our bishop has not said anything, but at our past annual conference, one gay pastor and a lesbian candidate to ministry, they were approved by the conference. And she knew, and she allowed it to happen. So, we don't know how that's gonna go, but that's where we are, okay? And so let me just read to you some of the things that I was telling you about the Baltimore, Washington Reconciling Ministries branch. Let me just give you some of the things that their mission statement that they have. So the purpose is to create and promote dialogue and education about the sacred worth of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons. Reach out to and affirm LGBTQ United Methodists and their friends, families, and loved ones. To support and encourage congregations and individuals in the process of becoming reconciling. Act to change exclusive and discriminatory policies and practices in the church. Stand in solidarity with all who have been excluded or marginalized by the church and society. Work within the United Methodist Church and work within and support the Reconciling Ministries Network. That's kind of what they have decided that they're gonna do and support. And so I think some of you have become individual members of the Reconciling Ministry Network. You can do that as an individual. And then there is a process for congregations to become a reconciling congregation. And remember, the reconciling word comes from 1972, when they were when the first statement that was created, it talks about how, I'm gonna read it to you. It says, 1972, this is what it said. Homosexuals, no less than heterosexuals, are persons of sacred worth, who need the ministry and guidance of the church in their struggles for human fulfillment, as well as the spiritual and emotional care of a fellowship which enables reconciling relationships with God, with others, and with self. Further, we insist that all persons are entitled to have their human and civil rights ensured. Again, all the history of the Reconciling Network traces back to the beginning of this statement that was not created by the Reconciling Network, but was created by a commission, just like it happened in 2016. The bishops created a commission to study and explore human sexuality, and then 3 years later they brought the report. That's what they did. In 1968, this group got together, they brought their report, and then things got more difficult in terms of human sexuality. So it's kind of like going back, repeating, and getting things more difficult for people who might be affirming or welcoming of people who are not heterosexuals in the life of the church as clergy and in general. Any questions about this group?
I'm not sure how you join it. How do you join it, online?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way.
And I believe it's $250 for the pleasure of joining them?
No.
$200 to $250?
Not
This is just a
individual,
donation?
nothing.
I don't know about that.
I believe if I looked at this, I looked online at the steps, step 4 was the suggested donation about $250.
You'll have to check that.
Well, what I saw online was to be a congregation, reconciling congregation, the suggested donation each year is $1,000. But then if the whole congregation doesn't agree to go along, then there's a mid-ground of community, which could be a Sunday school class or some smaller group than the whole
Within the
congregation, and that's $250 suggested a year.
Yeah,
I'm like Thelma, I want to leap ahead.
everybody wants to be there, somebody wants to be there.
Okay. As I understand it, right now, the book of discipline is pretty hard and fast.
Yep.
And that's what we're talking about changing. We have this group out there called the ACLU. And they don't even want us to exist. They don't want prayer in the school, prayer at the football game, whatever. Has there ever been any kind of a suit brought against, let's take the United Methodist Church, because our book of discipline does not follow the Constitution?
There is religious freedom, and so that protects, religious freedom protects denominations to make, churches to make these decisions, so they cannot do anything,
Okay.
okay?
Okay.
So-
I follow with you on that, Rich, in that my question is that why hasn't the ACLU come after the United Methodist Church for
I think you just
discrimination?
answered the question.
Religious freedom has nothing to do with discrimination
Well,
and
we are,
being-
we are protected, so,
So
you know,
think
because there are churches
we'll
that-
end up in the Supreme Court?
well,
you know,
there are churches that don't allow women to be clergy.
Okay.
So, you know, so
But-
there's all sorts, there's
if
all
our
sorts.
name was Lockheed Martin and not United Methodist Church, the ACLU could be all
Right,
over us
right,
for
right.
our hiring practices.
We are excluded of that. And I don't think that, I think that that will be a complicated road to take. Because I think we don't wanna go that way. I think we want to decide as people of faith who we wanna be and not forced to do certain things. And that's why there's this conversation about not staying together, right?
That's right.
So that if you want to stay together in a certain way, you stay together. If not, you have to be open to the possibility of becoming a separate denomination. But that's not a possibility. Okay? What other questions you might have about this? Some people have expressed to me concern about the name Reconciling because they feel that it has a political connotation, and that there's some discomfort about, it's almost like a political party, you know, a feeling that you become reconciling, that means you, for example, that you're a Democrat or that you're this or you're that or this. But that's not really where we are coming from, and that's not where the reconciling is coming from. Now, you could argue that they have some progressive tendencies that are different, or they're not your political preferences. But when Chelsea begins to talk to us about specifically what that would look like, is that we, even within becoming reconciling, we get to decide what that looks like for us. They're not going to impose on us what that means. We get to decide how we walk this journey as we become a more inclusive congregation. So I just want to make sure that you know that, so that you don't feel like by putting on a name, we're signing up to certain things that we don't get to decide. We as a congregation, we get to decide together what that is going to be like.
So each congregation, reconciling congregation, may be different.
It is, yes, they can be different, yes.
But in reverse of that direction, instead of them, not just them telling, they're not gonna tell us what to do specifically, but we end up on their lists. I know that was one of those things, that for us, it was a priority to find an inclusive church, just
Right.
what we wanted to teach our kids, and it was hard to find. I mean, there's like
That's the other thing.
affirmingchurch.org, and there's all these other things, and I mean, it took us years living in Bowie before we started coming here and found you guys, and we don't show up on these lists. St. Matthew's isn't known as an inclusive church on the internet. We were trying to find something, and we didn't see something here in Bowie.
I'm curious to know, even if we decide to do this.
We'll be on their website by zip
Oh,
code.
yeah, but I'm wondering, how do you let the community know? I mean, we've been saying for years, all we're
Well, you put it on
inclusive.
your congregation, you know, you put it on on your website, but it also, you become part of a database.
The database, yeah, that's the thing. So
So
Where
when
people
people
Google
are
you,
looking,
they
they
Google
will.
you.
there's like a handful of
there.
websites that keep coming up. It's like where you're supposed to find churches that are inclusive. And by getting into the Reconciling Ministries Network, you end up on those databases and you end up in those search results.
Mhm.
Yeah, so again, it's part of this moving forward into, again, claiming something that we, as you know, you have been doing it, I think. There's no name, but we have been doing it. And so,
Right.
you know,
And I think one of the fears that we have to acknowledge is that the people that are attracted by our suddenly being labeled and letting people know that we are reconciling don't get knocked down by the people on the way out the door. Because there will be some people who will leave.
Well, that's why we got a different church on every corner now. You know, more than 10 people get together, then they make another church.
I understand.
yeah.
But we also look out on Sunday and see a lot of empty pews.
Yeah,
Is
not
that
because, not
You
because of
think?
this issue.
Well, you know, before we go to Bill, you know, it is, this change is not only because of the sexuality, it's part of it, but it's not the only issue that is affecting people coming to church.
No, I understand
No,
that.
but I'm just also saying in general, is, I would say it's the perfect storm in some ways, but it also can be the perfect opportunity to
I understand that
redefine
also.
yourself and to claim who we really are. Because, you know, again, I would say this again, you know that one of the plans that was proposed to this year's conference was the one church plan where you would get to give flexibility to local congregations to express who they are without being separated. And so, and that's where, because the discipline became more punitive, people are being forced to take sides. So people who are not comfortable with taking sides are gonna have to take sides, because that's what the votes, you know, the political maneuvers or whatever you wanna call it, has brought us to this place where we, and you know, and we know that God is here and helping us and guiding us, so, you know, but I do think that it's been a very rude awakening for a lot of us, but also on top of other things happening in our society. A lot of things that have not been working for, I would say, 30 years. It's just that we didn't notice it. It's just that we're noticing now. So it's just hard, but I think it's a good opportunity.
I think we're just too late smart.
Well, we'll see.
If a church becomes a reconciling congregation, and if the main church splits into two, does the branch that becomes more progressive make reconciling congregations a moot point?
Certainly, because I think it's going to be very clear from the beginning what kind of denomination you are. So for example, the Presbyterians and the Episcopalians,
Right.
during their splits, they became inclusive, right, in all ways. Same-sex weddings, gay clergy, all of those things is not a question, it's part of their polity. So yes, in some ways it will become a good point. It's just that we might be 2 to 3 years away from an official split
Why did they split?
for the same issue that we are.
That's right.
They just got an early start because that took place in the 80s.
Well, we have a different polity. We have a different church polity. We are a connectional church. We are an international church. We have bishops. We have an appointment system. All of the, those churches, although the Episcopalians, they have a bishop, the bishop doesn't have the authority that a Methodist bishop has to really send you or move you or do those things. And so it is a more, it's, to untangle all those institutions really is a challenge. The bigger you are, the more difficult it is for you to split. And I don't want to use the image of a divorce, but if you think about it like that, when you have a lot of assets and complicated relationships, it's just really hard to
Yeah.
have a
it is.
clean cut. There will be lawyers, there will be conversations, there will be fights. I mean, it's just the unfortunate reality.
The United Methodist Church spans 4 continents. That's a lot of geography.
Yeah.
So even if a reconciling congregation now really doesn't have the right or the authority to go different from the discipline. So if a reconciling congregation, the pastor still can't do gay marriages and you can't have gay clergy. So how is it?
Now,
As part of, yeah,
But it
as
could
part of it, I
change.
mean, that's the rule now.
Right.
So even if you become a reconciling congregation, that means that at the upper level, we can't do anything different. We can be more inclusive in our membership and welcoming everyone. Right, I mean, that's true?
Isn't that what it's about?
That's what.
And that's kind of like, and our mission statement says that now, right?
But it's kind of like what they were saying. You become also, I mean, you don't need to use the maybe reconciling, but there has to be some sort of clarity about who you are as a congregation, even if you still can't do certain things that you may want to do. For people to know that you're going to be inclusive, with people who are looking for a church, for new people who are looking for a church, and even for some of you who are, coming to the realization that you have children, grandchildren, you have friends, you have neighbors who might, you want it to be welcome here, and you might be thinking about, are we going to be welcoming or not? And so, what statement? I mean, that's really what happened after general conference. There's been a mobilization of churches who were not interested in this because of the opposite statement that was made at general conference. The opposite statement was, we're going to be harder and harsher when it comes to sexuality. So that's going to be the law, right? And so what as a congregation are you going to do? So if you don't say anything, that means you're embracing that way. Is that what we want to say? So you have to then maneuver, what's the alternative? The alternative is that that's not who we are, and so we want to begin this process to express it in the way that we really are feeling that God is calling us to be. So there's, it's never a perfect process where everyone is going to agree how you do it or how you welcome or what you do, but I think it's a step in that direction for people who is an important issue,
as you pointed out earlier, the Presbyterian Church divided itself. The Episcopal Church divided itself.
The Lutheran Church too.
And
The congregations.
the reason I bring that up is not in any judgmental way, but Holy Trinity, one of the oldest churches in our community, now has a lesbian priest. And that did cause a large percentage of their congregation to vote with their feet. And
But not because she was a lesbian, though. Believe me,
But
I know the insides and outs of that. That wasn't the
What I will
reason.
tell you is that at this point,
They're
if
closing.
you think we're
They're
suffering,
closing. They're
November
closing.
17th is their last day.
Right, they're
Okay.
closing.
Well,
my.
Yeah, they're closing. Yeah, they're
Well,
closing.
they don't have anybody comes to church.
Yeah, they're closing. Yeah, I was
I
aware
did
of
not
that.
know that, but
I
I
was
didn't
aware
know
of
that
that.
they were suffering.
No, me neither. I was not aware that they were struggling, until I got an email to letting me know that they were closing.
But not
So-
because the priest was gay.
Yeah,
Believe me.
right.
They're really
Why?
historically old. They go back to the Underground Railroad.
Yeah, another hypothetical question that would come to mind, that if a person in the gay community were looking for a church home, would they start with the policies of the denomination? And if they went to the United Methodist policy, they would know what the restrictions we have on being a gay clergy or having gay marriage. So would they even choose to go to a United Methodist denomination or local church of any description, knowing that if that church follows the rules of the denomination, that they would not be able to get married, or they wouldn't be able to go into the clergy?
Seems like we have a really good sorry, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Hey, Deb.
Did so how did you find us if you went on websites and we weren't listed? How come you tried us out?
For one thing, I'm from California, and a lot of the UMC churches out there are a little more progressive. What I kept hearing is that it's very church dependent. Same thing even with you're talking about the Presbyterians. It's every congregation dependent. And a lot of folks don't want to put much online. So we just started we started signing up our kids for VBS and all that, and you know.
So basically you're saying you kind of shopped around.
Of course.
Just like everybody else.
I mean,
My in-laws are shopping around now for a church.
That's how I find this
Right,
church,
right,
shop
right.
around.
That's the same.
But I would say that if we're looking at younger people, we have to realize, I mean, it's hard for me too, because I was saying, well, this is ridiculous, but that's the younger, and I'm saying you're the youngest person in here.
She probably
Yeah,
is. You are
because
there.
that's
Looking
what
around,
they do.
yes.
My nieces and nephews, like, you gotta do the internet, you gotta do this, you can't just go in. I mean,
Right.
they do everything that way. They do everything that way.
Right,
They
right.
don't-
And to answer your question, that there recently, Communications just looked at an article that came out, and the title of it was, "The Online Church is Your Front Door." And statistically, someone will look at your church for anywhere from 6 months to a year online and follow them before they ever physically come into your church. Sometimes longer than that.
I mean, but there's all ages in Bowie, so I don't think it can just be specifically to target the younger groups.
No, no.
But
No,
clearly,
no.
the younger people are gonna be looking at that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I don't think most of us think
Yeah,
that way.
yeah, yeah.
But we
I
don't know.
mean, everybody I knew that would fall into this group lived openly their whole life. Like, or even their whole life. Maybe they came out in high school, maybe they came out in college. But we know people, right? Everybody I know knows somebody that would fall into one of these letters. It's not a nameless person. It's not something that was kept in secret. And you saw them be hurt over and over and over, especially the people in the church. And that's why it was so important for us, was we didn't want our kids to be one of those people that hurt people using God as the reason. And so we didn't want to have them associate church with that kind of behavior.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, again, it's also, if we just strip away everything of the, you know, the name or, I mean, I think it's also a pastoral issue when, you know, we had a meeting with our bishop last week. I think I mentioned it maybe last week again, a week ago. She was saying that when the General Conference voted the way it voted, she said that she received 4 phone calls of clergy with threatening suicide. That she had to deal with it, you know, because the bishop is our pastor, you know, that's.
Right.
So they called the bishop, and it was, you know, that there had to be an intervention. Because we have clergy who are, they might be, you know, gay, they may have a daughter or a son,
That's right.
and they're afraid for their mental health and all of those things. And I think, you know, it just really, so when you say, when you have to, you know, I think the fact that we have to say it is just sad that we have to say it, you know what I mean? In the sense of that all people are loved and all people are welcome, but you have to say it. You have to state it in a certain way so that people would know. And I don't wanna, reconciling can be a code word for some things, but it's really a clarifying word, for people who are searching for a community where they can be comfortable. Now, that doesn't mean we're not gonna disagree about other things, so that, well, that's life. But at least when it comes to that issue, what kind of people do we wanna be? And I think that's the main question. When it comes to, maybe Rich, you kind of touched on that, and you too, Bill. I mean, I think that, and you too, Suzanne. I mean, again, even from 10 years, things are very different. I mean, 10 years, we didn't have gay marriage. Is it 10 years of gay marriage? How long ago?
Probably not.
Not
sure. It would be about 10, yeah.
Really? Gay marriage 10 years?
Maybe less
Yeah,
than
we're
that.
Someone Google it. Someone Google it. But I'm just telling you that right.
It's true.
It hasn't been that
It's gotta be
long.
around 10 because.
Right, so
Yeah,
even,
domestic, yeah.
it hasn't been that long since we changed things, right? And so, and it's true, the church is always behind
Oh,
changes. Same question about race. With the race,
Yep.
we were behind the race conversation, and you look back in some ways and say, wow, why were we in that place? How is it possible? But we were in it. We were part of it in one way or another. This is not to put any guilt on anyone. I'm just telling you that, change takes time, and it's hard to adjust to change. And so when it comes to, the way we connect with people, we evangelize people, we relate to people, we share our faith, it's also, it's fluid, it's changing, and we all we are adapting, and it's taking us a long time, but we have to do it. Otherwise, we're gonna be in that place. All mainline denominations are struggling. It's not just this church. And I think, but at the same time, I really think that this is a great opportunity for St. Matthew's to clarify who we are. Because I think that, you can say, oh, there's so many people who don't come to church. Or you can say, wow, look at all the people that could come to church if we love them and connect with them. If we show them the love of Christ. Look at all these people. There are a lot of possibilities. That would be my perspective.
So, this is a, pretty good conversation. I think we're getting some information. But this is a really small group as compared to the rest of the St. Matthew's congregation.
But we have all the leaders here.
So,
Or former leaders.
how are we going to get this kind of information out to the rest of the people
Here.
who are not here?
Yeah, it's a really good point.
Can I answer that one for you?
We'll answer that.
I'm asking.
Okay.
Partially is what we're doing now. We're recording all of these, and all of these will be starting hopefully tomorrow. As we get them, will be posted on our website, right up front, main page. You'll see it the minute you go to the website. They'll, be on our
We're gonna
social
edit that out.
media page. Yes.
You okay?
Yeah, but what about the point that a whole bunch of people in our congregation are of a certain age that could care less or don't know anything about a website? Even though,
You mean like people that are part of St. Matthew's already?
yeah,
Okay.
we have a lot of people. I mean, look around our congregation, most of them have as much or more gray hair than I do. I know about the website and I know how to use it, but there's a lot of people here that may not even have a computer.
Yeah, I mean,
How many people are the Tuesday mornings?
And we're talking,
say maybe.
I mean, I
a little less.
appreciate what you're saying, but there's
Well-
also another side to that too.
we have our print media that goes out too, that they do
So,
read.
there is no perfect system, but I think one way that could be maybe improve is if you tell people to come. If you call them and tell them, if you invite them, because, we try to do it in every way we can on Sunday mornings. And
This is
so
part
if
of-
you miss a Sunday morning, just in general, you miss a lot of information. Like a lot of, you miss good sermons, you miss good music, you miss seeing your friends. And so that's a big chunk. So if you don't come, then we're gonna send an email, we're gonna send this, we're gonna do that. It's not a perfect system, and we just.
But I think you hit on a good point, and that is that more people show up on Sunday morning than show up on Monday night. And so if this kind of information, I think, was given as a sermon, more people would get.
We have talked with the reconciling process, the reconciling task force, and they felt that a sermon right now about that, especially, remember, this has been, I just want to put it in perspective, this has been the general conference here has been very challenging, because I don't think many of us were expecting this kind of vote. But then you also have to remember that as the denomination was blowing up, we were doing a debt reduction campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? And so people already were upset about it. People were already concerned about it. So, how do you, it's just, you need to put yourselves in the perspective of, you have limited resources. We're trying to bring all of us together and try to stay on track, but it's hard to plan, and just like I think this is a good point, because I would say 70% of you are retired.
Or what?
Retired here tonight.
My wife would disagree with you.
70%.
Tired.
Retired. 70% of all of you are retired. Wait, let me finish. 70% are retired. Mike, what do you think?
Probably more.
Who's not retired? Who's not retired?
Not retired, yeah.
But I'm still working.
Okay, five. Okay, so who has the time to come and do and hear?
Come and do what?
Here.
Here,
Oh.
like you may, yeah, to hear.
But
And so, but my point is that right now, because we are in a transition of church people and how we are changing, the people that, they're the other people who are working, they get their information by email, they get their information by the website, they actually look at the sermons. I don't know how many clicks we get every week, but people do go to the website and listen to the sermons when they don't come to church. So all of that stuff is gonna try to be provided, but to be honest, they're really busy too. And it's really hard to capture the magical time. Sundays, even Sundays, it's hard to keep you here, because again, just from a logistical perspective, you have Sunday school classes. And if we do a session like this, people get upset that we take you away from your Sunday school class. So we got complaints when we did those sessions that we were taking you away from your Sunday school class. We got emails, angry. So you tell us how we do it, because there's no perfect. Go ahead.
I would just like to, take issue with the idea of doing it as a sermon or in a large group. The larger your group, the less you get accomplished. And the thing is that the good news is that sitting here are people who are members of small groups.
Right,
The circles, the men's
Right.
breakfasts.
right, right.
And those are the places to pass along what we have learned and open discussion.
Right. So we're counting on you to tell the people part of it, what we're talking. You had a question.
Just to say, as you live your life in general, one of the axioms should be, no matter which way you go on this issue, it being true to yourself and your values, whether it's church, friends, activities that you partake in. What's core to each of us with a Christian base is our individual values. So whichever way you go, it's going to be difficult if it's not in accord with your basic values. And that makes this issue even harder. But the door will swing both ways. Whichever way you go, you may lose members.
Right.
But in the end, we know when you state your Christian values in life, you cannot be penalized.
Right. Agreed. Agreed.
You know, it's just an
Yeah.
observation.
Right, no, I agree. It's hard.
I usually come to the Tuesday morning group, and I just want to reassure you that they are the same kind of people who are really, studying this issue, and they really do care about
Right,
it. So,
yeah. And so I'm just very thankful that, I have friends, pastor friends who are in congregations where they cannot feel that they can express what they really think about this. And I'm very lucky to be here as members with all of you because, who was asking, you were asking if they send some, when there's a
Yes, I
pastoral
was asking,
change, do they
yes.
take into account? Yes, they have to take into account, who you are and who the congregation is. Because
You've been here 5 years, who knows?
Right.
How long you're going
you
to be.
have to be compatible at least. You have to be
Never
compatible.
know.
Yeah, you have to be, but you have to be compatible so that, even if you don't agree on everything, you agree on the values, so that you can work together and move forward. And so I just want to say that I'm very thankful for all of you for giving this, for having this openness to explore this. And I know, again, I think I said it in the email that I sent, I know some of you are ready to vote, like, right now. Let's vote.
Right now.
Let's just take a
Yes.
vote.
Yes.
Let's get it over with. Let's do it.
Yes, let's
Suzanne, let's do it.
No, I don't want
I'm
that.
kidding, I'm kidding.
No, I'd say it every
I'm kidding,
time.
I'm
I just want
kidding.
to know more
I'm kidding.
about
No,
the
no.
thing.
But my point is to, we have people that you love, who are really struggling with this. And we want to love them, we want to talk to them, we want to pray for them, so that they know how they feel about it, and you are going to be that sounding board for them.
But I have people that I love, my grandchildren, and they don't want anything to do with church because they think we're all just can't see for the fog. They don't even understand this problem.
You can't understand what you don't come and acknowledge,
I know. Well,
Bible.
and I have one granddaughter. She's a gay lady. At 22, she's gay, and it's sad when you gather around the dinner table and they start asking these questions about what is this issue? You're supposed to be inclusive. You love everybody, right? Except you don't love me. So it's tough. It's hard.
You mentioned earlier that something had come out via email, and one of the messages was that the vote on this will not take place until January.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
thank you. So, we have a new district superintendent.
Yeah.
And she is going to be doing personally all the church conferences.
Okay.
She's not gonna, district superintendents, they get pastors and then they send them to do the conferences. And they do it in clusters. But because it's her first year, she wants to do all of them. And I think we have 80 churches in our area. And so her schedule is very I cannot, and now, the DS doesn't have to be here for the votes, but she wants to also be part of it to make sure that as a pastoral issue, that we understand what we are doing and that it's not gonna become a larger problem because some congregations are on the opposite spectrum of this. They are deciding if they wanna stay in the denomination because they're not happy with the conversation that we're having.
And her presence here does not equal a thumb on the scale.
No. She is gonna allow us to decide. She's not here to, but she just wants to make sure that we all understand. So she's gonna give us her schedule for January so that we can move forward with that.
If I remember correctly, there's a process that United Methodist Church has to go through according to the Book of Discipline to become a part of an outside organization has to get approved
Well,
by the district or the conference?
It's fussy in some ways because for the reconciling process, you know, just like remember that we adopted a welcoming statement a few months ago, that we have a welcoming statement. And so churches have done it in different ways. There's really nothing in the book of discipline that tells you that how to vote for an welcoming statement. And so the reconciling process is kind of on that same, there are some things that you can interpret that, yeah, you can use that from the book of discipline, but there's really nothing, but except that you want to have, you know, some churches, they have their church council, they are the ones who vote, and they decide, and that's it. Some other churches do what we are thinking we're going to do, to have a larger vote, and even when we do a larger vote, not everybody's going to be here when that vote happens, so I think there's going to be some people are going to vote when they're not, you know, so there are all those things that we need to clarify. But I think it's going to be up to us, and what we can tell you is that we really want as many people as possible to vote in one way or another if they can be here. So we have to figure out all those things because it's not clear according to the book of Acts. So, well, I think there's a game happening. And it's after 8.
What game?
There are 2 games apparently.
Yeah, there are.
Maybe it's something we said.
Right. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And Chelsea is gonna, next week, she actually is going to tell you specifically about our process. The pros and the cons, questions that you may have, of what is gonna be for us, you know, becoming a reconciling process. I mean, a reconciling congregation.
Will that include consequences?
She's gonna let you know all of those things.
And you don't have to work it, John.
It's going to be, again, you have to remember that we are part of a progressive conference. Okay, our conference is more progressive than other conferences. We have a bishop that is more
See,
progressive.
that's their problem.
So that affects, in a good way, how we are going to be doing things and how things can play out for next year. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.